All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update. And today's update is going to be just a little bit different from my typical update because I wanted to touch on a very specific subject today to finally put something to rest on my channel. And it is going to tie into something I'm going to discuss at the end. So you're going to want to stick around for the whole video. First of all, the answer that I want, or the question that I want to answer is there any possibility that I'm going to go into the Superman movie and like it? Or am I going in with this preconceived notion that it is going to suck? There are a lot of people out there who think I have made up my mind and that I'm just going to go into the movie and automatically hate it. And that isn't true. And if you think that I go into a movie just to hate it or into a TV show just to hate it, you don't know who I am. I am actually a review channel. I've been reviewing movies pretty much my entire life. And I will tell you that I have never gone into a movie with a preconceived notion of what it was going to be. I go into every single project as a blank slate, regardless of who made it and who was involved. I don't care about the studio. I don't care about the person who directed it. And I have several ways I could prove this to you. The first being, go look at my review for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Also, I would say go look at my review for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was done by Warner or whatever the movie last year, whatever the name of it was. That was done by Warner Brothers. And go watch my review on those two films. The other way I'm going to prove it to you, and then when I'm done with this part of it, I'm going to talk about at the very end why people like me are out here having issues with what Warner Brothers is doing. There's really a real reason. So the other reason I will tell you that I don't go in, with preconceived notions is back when Ben Affleck was announced as Batman. Now, I didn't have my channel back then, but I was not happy about Ben Affleck being Batman. In fact, when he was announced as Batman, I actually had several friends text me, and I was like, this is going to be a disaster. I don't see how there's any way in which Ben Affleck is going to be able to fill the shoes of being Batman. But there were some things that happened in Batman versus Superman that really completely changed my mind, where he became Batman. The first is the world-renowned warehouse scene. You cannot deny that that was the single best scene ever filmed for Batman, and will always, I don't think there's going to be any way that any movie is ever going to be able to top that warehouse scene in Batman versus Superman. To see Batman in action was amazing. And I encourage everybody, if you haven't seen it, go watch the behind the scenes of the warehouse scene. It was all shot practically. There's very little, if any, CGI in that scene. It was all shot practically. And you got to see Batman fight like Batman should fight. You got to see him be a big brute and take people down. That is the Batman ripped directly from comic books. And you also had at the end of Batman versus Superman, the entire scene where he goes to visit Lex Luthor, before he's headed off to, Arkham Asylum. Oh my gosh. The intimidation in that scene, we have never seen any rendition of Batman where he was that intimidating. Like, it was freaking awesome. Now you're going to have people come out of the woodwork and say, well, we hated that version of Batman because he branded people or he killed people. And you have to understand a couple of things. First of all, Lex was the one that was getting people branded and killed in prison. And you would know that if you actually watched the Batman versus Superman extended edition, okay? It explains a whole bunch of crap that wasn't explained in the theatrical cut. And it is still Warner Brothers' fault why we are where we are. That's one of them. And the other thing about him killing people, he didn't really necessarily kill anybody in that warehouse scene except for people who, obviously you had the grenade come at him and he smacked it back at the guy, and then the guy, obviously those things are happening, but these are people who are trying to kill him, okay? And in the real world, Batman would have to protect himself. And Batman was in a very different spot. There was an arc going on for Batman. If you go back to the end of Batman, or not Batman versus Superman, but Zack Snyder's Justice League, at the very end, these characters were becoming who they originally were supposed to be. Batman and, well, not Batman, but you had Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, outside the farmhouse, and they were having a very interesting conversation, and these characters were getting back to what they used to be. More optimistic, not pessimistic. And there were a lot of things that were teased that were going to be awesome. Like, especially at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League when he goes into the destroyed Wayne Manor, and they were talking about setting up a table and setting up the Justice League. That's pretty freaking awesome, guys. And there was so much promise with that, right? So also, when that movie came out, that was when Warner Brothers stock was at its highest ever. Like, it shot way up when Zack Snyder's Justice League got released. All of the toys continue to sell from those films. And people just keep telling those of us that hold on to that to move on. Move on. Just move on. Accept it. Swallow it. Take it. That's not how this works. Just because you're a fan of these characters doesn't mean you have to shovel in all of the garbage that the studio is going to push your way. And you have to understand how the fandom was really excited to have Henry Cavill come back as Superman. You had Zack Snyder's Justice League get released. We got to see the Flash do stuff he didn't get to do in the Joss Whedon version. We got to see Superman return, use the black suit. We got to see, him appear in Black Adam for like 10 seconds. And everybody complains nobody went to see that movie. They actually did. That had more ticket sales than any other film since Aquaman. And people were finally excited to start going back, and that was a taste of things to come. And nobody goes to the movies for a 10-second cameo on one character. That doesn't happen. That's not how it works. And so we got to see him come back for about 10 seconds, and it got everybody excited. And then in the following weeks, this isn't when Zaslav is in charge, Warner Brothers actually had Henry Cavill go around the circuit and announce that he was back. In all the interviews that he was doing for that and for The Witcher, and he was talking about, how he's back, there's good things coming up. And when it was just a month or so later, or 2 months later, when they announced the reboot, which to this day is the stupidest thing. You have to understand, when you're invested in a universe and then the studio comes in and says, we're rebooting crap, the remaining projects in that universe become irrelevant. They're not going to lead anywhere. And what kills me is James Gunn said that they changed stuff at the end of The Flash and other things because they didn't want to entice people that things were going to continue further. We already knew they were being canceled, so what does it matter? Give those fans more of those characters that they enjoy. We already know you're taking them away, so there's no reason why you can't let them enjoy what they were supposed to get in the first place, okay? So that was nasty business. We were lied to, where the studio kept talking about how awesome The Flash was. David Zaslav said he saw it like 5 times. It's his favorite superhero film. James Gunn was talking about how awesome it was. They had Tom Cruise come out. They had Stephen King come out. And everybody was talking about how awesome it was, and it was all a lie. It was all studio spin. It was all a lie. They wanted to just get people excited to go see the movie, and they still didn't go. And how do you not get the fans to go when you have Michael Keaton, which is the general audience's favorite Batman ever? You have him come back into that role, and you still can't get people to go see the movie. Because you announced a reboot. How do people not understand that? They'll sit there and try to say it's because interest was waning in the DCU. Nobody liked the DCU. It's not that they didn't like it. It's like they already knew that those movies were irrelevant. And they're like, I'll just catch it on streaming. What do I care? I'm not going to go spend the money on it. They're not going to continue that, so why am I going to support it? You can't get mad at people for doing that. It's their right. to keep playing with your fans and say, we're back, we're not, we're back. You give Zack Snyder's Justice League. The worst thing they ever did was give fans Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I think this is going to, because of what happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League, I can all but guarantee you guys that the Ayer cut will never see the light of day. I hope it does. I pray it does. But I don't think it ever will, because the studio made a mistake and they looked stupid when Zack Snyder's Justice League got released. It exposed how stupid they were. And they continue to make stupid decisions. So this is why I'm going into this with some caution. But if I go to Superman, it ends up being great. I am going to tell you guys, I am absolutely going to go in that as a blank slate and review it exactly as it is on its own merits, regardless of James Gunn being involved, regardless of Warner Brothers being involved. It is a Superman film. So if it's good, I'll tell you. But that doesn't mean we're moving on. Even if it is good, it doesn't mean we're moving on from what we had, because you have to understand that they never finished that story. They didn't have an end to that story. There was no conclusion. We deserved, the filmmakers deserve that conclusion. The fans deserve that conclusion. Those early films made bank because people were interested in going to the theater. And I can't stand it when people say Batman versus Superman ruined DC, because they kept coming for the next 4 years. If it ruined it, they wouldn't be coming. It's just asinine the way people talk about that. It's just, there is no critical thinking in regards to that. So, yeah, there are those of us who are not going to move on. And we're not just going to accept what the studio throws at us. If it's garbage, we're going to say it. And I hate to say it, but Superman has a lot to live up to. It has an uphill climb to battle. And I don't see any way that film can live up to its predecessor. You have a fractured fan base that Warner Brothers has created. It's their own fault. It doesn't have to do with people liking this or people liking that. We're all allowed to like what we like. That doesn't mean other people can't like what they like. And that's up to them. You know, I love the fact that people are optimistic for Superman, and I'm happy for you. I hope the film turns out the way you're hoping it turns out, because Warner Brothers has this way of ruining everything. They just do. And so we'll see when it gets released. I am going to be a completely blank slate. Same with Creature Commandos coming up. I'm going to review that honestly. I have no desire to watch it, but if it ends up being good, I am going to admit it. But I will tell you, the Suicide Squad was garbage. Peacemaker, while I enjoyed it, was juvenile garbage. This is the guy who's in charge. And you wonder why people are a little cautious about going into Superman. James Gunn has never done anything in his career that shows up he's up to the task. And you can't use the Guardians of the Galaxy films, because those were out of the norm for everything he's ever done. The only thing that's in the norm for him is that they're ensemble films. And that's what he's doing with Superman. You could deny it, but it's an ensemble film. There is no question about it. All right, guys, so I wanted to put that to rest and kind of give you guys, my thoughts on this. I'm going to go into everything hoping it's good, but if it's not, I'm going to be 100% honest. I will. And that is always my promise and has always been my promise on my channel. All right, guys, we will see you on the next update.